Once again, I am woken up by the muffled sound of my geriatric one-eyed dog. The bark is muffled because of the noise-canceling AirPods I wear almost every night as I listen to the same movie to help drown out the incessant worry and rage constantly spinning in my head.
And that was all this morning?
Seriously, like the first 60 seconds. Yeah.
Welcome to the Empty Nest Happy Hour podcast, where it's always happy hour because the nest is empty.
Relax your shoulders, loosen your grip, pour yourself a drink. It's time for the Empty Nest Happy Hour, a hilarious, mostly weekly podcast exploring midlife, parenting, empty nesting, women's rights, pop culture, whatever. And I am so pleased to announce this week we have a sponsor.
We have a sponsor.
So, to help you relax your shoulders,
we are sponsored by Yin Yang Pilates and Yoga in Lake Zurich, Illinois. Yin Yang Pilates and Yoga helps mostly women who finally have time for themselves move better and feel better in the body they are in. They fully welcome you into their community and treat everyone with kindness and respect.
Yin Yang is offering new clients a 30% discount off an exploratory session, which is a 55-minute one-on-one introduction to Pilates and equipment, where Yin Yang instructors will talk through your goals, get a background of any injuries or conditions you might have, and pick appropriate exercises based on you. That sounds so good.
I know.
As an individual, head to yinyangpilates.com and use Listen Up. Discount code ENHH30 when you book your exploratory session. I'm so excited to have a discount code, a real one, not one I just made up. And for those of you already clients of Yin Yang, you can use ENHH for a 30% discount off of one semi-private session. Yin Yang also has non-equipment virtual classes that include yoga, bar, energizing stretch, and Pilates mat for those of you listening who are not based in the northwest suburbs of Chicago, or as we say in Illinois, downstate.
So check out Yin Yang Pilates and Yoga at yinyangpilates.com. That's YINYANG Pilates.com. And thank you for sponsoring the Empty Nest Happy Hour podcast.
And as a downstater, a downstate liver, not a downstate dresser, I'm going to try those virtual classes.
Yeah.
I think that sounds great. So yay. Thank you, Yin Yang. And welcome to the Empty Nest Happy Hour podcast, where we always say, everything we say here is our truth now. We are not experts on anything, but we have a lot to say about everything.
Yes, we do. And you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at emptynesthappyhour.com. Our website is emptynesthappyhour.com, and our email address is info@emptynesthappyhour.com. You know where to find us these days.
Yes, you do. I'm Amy.
And I'm Danielle.
And this week we're drinking
appropriately the Cape Codder, based off of our book Sandwich that we're going to be discussing today, because the location is Cape Cod and it's great. It's vodka, cranberry juice, you top with a little club soda, lime wedge for garnish, real easy. Honestly, it tastes good probably with some lobster rolls or just some lobster,
yeah.
Right? All that fresh seafood and that tartness of the cranberry.
I didn't put enough vodka in.
It's okay. We can add that later when we actually don't have to use words.
That's good call. Good call. So what are we talking about this week?
Well, so this is it started as a hyper-local conversation. So we're going to broaden it. But I had a conversation with somebody the other day about our local sports arena here that is called, well, technically, it's called the State Farm Center, but for those of us that have lived here for a long time, we call it still the Assembly Hall. And it made me think about all the different things that we have decided, yes, will change, or no, we won't change. Like things get updated, and like the Sears Tower is always going to be the Sears Tower.
Yeah,
not
I will
Willis
never
Tower.
call it the Willis Tower. It's not the Willis Tower. It's the Sears Tower. Does Sears even exist anymore?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't either.
That's a good question.
Have an
We'll have to look
update.
it up.
Yeah, we'll have an update on that next week for you. Does Sears exist? Crazy.
So, those were the ones that first popped into my head.
Mhm.
I have a whole list, but what pops into your head with some of
So
that?
actually, the Sears Tower was one of the first ones that
Yeah.
popped into my head. And another one is Marshall Fields.
Yes.
So, like we've said, we're not from Chicago, but we are Chicago adjacent. And Marshall Fields is like the landmark place of downtown Chicago. Always was and always will be, even though it's been Macy's for probably 20 years now.
Probably.
Yeah.
You know, I go by those windows. Marshall Fields used to really do up the
Yeah.
Christmas windows,
Yeah.
and Macy's does not.
Yeah. No.
But they still have the Frango mints at Christmas
Yep.
time. So there's a lot of things that they've held on
They have
tradition.
Frango mints all year round. My father is addicted to Frango mints.
Okay. Well, good to know.
Yeah.
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 You just go by the Oak Room, and then
Yep.
it's right there.
Yeah. Oh, those are
Yeah.
the days. The other one that is actually very close to us is our local grocery store, sort of regional grocery store chain, just randomly changed their name.
Yeah. I didn't understand that.
I didn't either, because it doesn't. So it's owned by the Neiman's, I guess,
Mhm.
family, and they were a county market. Now they're Neiman's. No one's going to call it Neiman's.
No. And it doesn't even sound like a grocery store.
No, it makes me think of Neiman Marcus, which
Right.
I'm not like, that's not the mindset that I'm in when I'm there buying bananas and milk,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe if I say, oh, I have to go to Neiman's, I'll feel better about it.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Or
But
it's going to be too expensive.
I will tell you that the bag guy that's always there when I'm shopping has not made the change.
Okay.
He still says, thanks for coming to County Market.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
Does it have the automated checkouts changed and updated? Thanks for shopping at
I
Neiman's?
don't know. I haven't noticed. But like the signs, nobody's going to call it that.
I don't think so either. That's just a bizarre one
Yeah.
to do. So, yeah. So here's some other ones I pulled up. Comiskey, which is where the
Mhm.
White Sox, some of these are really Chicago. So bear with us. We'll get
Mhm.
out of Chicago. Comiskey is what I think the majority of people still call it.
Right.
It went to U.S. Cellular Field, then Guaranteed Rate Field, and now they just call it Rate Field. But everyone still just calls it Comiskey.
Comiskey Park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lakeshore Drive is now
That's right. Yeah.
right. The DuSable Lakeshore.
DuSable.
Yep.
Yeah.
And people
And
still call it
also,
that.
Congress is, what's her name? Congress is a road that goes right into downtown Chicago.
I didn't realize they changed that.
Yeah, they did.
Okay. Well, some other ones like in LA, the Staples Center, which I think everybody still calls the Staples Center, is now Crypto.com Arena. That just doesn't roll off the tongue.
No, it sounds stupid.
In San Francisco, Candlestick Park is now Levi's Stadium.
Oh, wow.
Candlestick Park just sounded so cool, and now Levi's Stadium. The Bay Bridge, I didn't know, in San Francisco, I don't know if you knew that they changed that.
How, like, is it sponsored now?
It's the Will L. Brown Jr. Bridge.
Oh, Willie Brown?
Yeah. So we're still calling it the Bay Bridge.
And it's memorializing, not sponsored by.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's Ida B. Wells is Congress.
I didn't realize they made that switch. And then I was like, okay, so what are some other weird name changes? So U of I played in the Citrus Bowl this year for football. It's now the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl, which doesn't really...
That sounds vomit-inducing.
Right? And the Citrus Bowl used to be the Tangerine Bowl.
Oh, really?
So I don't know if, tangerines were getting all the love and the oranges were all angry. They weren't getting the love. So the Citrus Bowl came out. The Peach Bowl is now the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl.
Makes me want to hurl.
I know. None of that makes sense.
No.
Here's the worst one. The Motor City Bowl, which is in Detroit, is now just called the Little Caesars Pizza Bowl.
Pizza Bowl.
So there's no Detroit, Michigan, anything references. A lot of these are sports related,
right?
Because that is a big part of sponsorship. The British Open is now just called the Open Championship.
I didn't know that. Really?
Yeah, and I think most Americans still call it the British Open.
Yeah.
The French Open for tennis is Roland Garros.
Really?
Which is named after a World War I fighter pilot. The stadium was actually named after him, and then it kind of got updated.
Oh, yeah, I knew the stadium, but now it's just called that
Roland
instead
Garros.
of the French Open.
And then a couple of other ones, which I didn't realize. Armistice Day is now Veterans Day. That was a pretty, easy switch for us because we didn't know it any different.
Right.
Decoration Day is
Yeah.
Memorial
Memorial
Day.
Day.
And Washington's birthday is now President's Day with all the furniture sales.
Right.
So there's lots of things I think that people will say, yes, I will update, and a lot that you just are going to continue to keep in the old fashion of.
Right. We're just going to still call it that. I'm
Right.
always going to call Marshall Fields.
Yeah.
I'm always going to call the Sears Tower. And I'm always going to call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of Mexico.
Well, you're not going to be able to be admitted into the White House briefing now.
No. Just,
That's a whole different.
yes.
Yeah, exactly. That's the newest one that we're having a hard time making the change for. Yeah, so it was just the lexicon of different buildings and structures and things that are just part of pop culture and
Well-
our everyday lives. It's really hard to change those names.
It's interesting too how often some of them change, especially stadiums.
Yeah.
And that's why people just call them the name that it was when they were growing up,
Mhm.
because I can't keep track of TD America or Ameritrade and
Right.
Verizon. And it seems like, yeah. Well, and then what we have here is Assembly Hall is the State Farm Center, but there are State Farm Centers all over the United States. So you have to make sure when you're like looking for tickets that you're finding the right State Farm Center.
Yeah, exactly.
So, what, should we outlaw name changes or should we?
I don't know.
I don't either.
And I know that it is part. It's fundraising, right? That's
Right.
It's a lot of what I
100%, yeah.
do, and so I think that there's it has to happen. I think it's okay for the public to. Yes, I'm going to adopt that.
Yeah.
I know once it changes officially, like the University of Illinois has to refer to it as the State Farm Center.
Yeah.
And I think that's okay, but I think it's also okay for people to continue to have that nostalgia around
Yeah.
it. And it's kind of stands on its own.
Yeah.
Not that you don't want to thank your sponsor, but
Right.
And sponsors change because it might be a 5-year contract and then they'll look for another contract. And
Right.
that sponsor, like crypto.com arena, might not be around in 5 years or whatever that is. So.
It's interesting too to talk to people when this is a very niche. When you talk about live shows that they went to, like concerts, and what era.
Yes.
Based on, is it Deer Creek? Well, Deer Creek is in Noblesville, Indiana. It's an outdoor amphitheater. And I don't even know what the name of it is
It's
now.
really hard for me to remember how to pronounce it.
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
We just saw Dave Matthews there a couple of summers ago. Yeah.
But it was, the whole time I was growing up, it was Deer Creek. And so, if somebody are like, oh yeah, I saw them at Deer Creek. Well, that was clearly in the 80s or whatever. So now I know how old you are. But it's yeah, and people still refer to it as, even though I have no idea what the name of it is. It's been like 2 different names since I have been going there, like as an adult. I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's a weird thing that we do.
Yeah. A lot of those outdoor ones. Yeah, I think you're right, because we went to a lot of those outdoor concert venues and they definitely are not. I'm trying to think of the one south suburb. I can't even remember.
Tinley Park.
Tinley Park. It's not Tinley Park. Oh, I mean, that's the location
It was the World Music Theater for a while. It was, I can't remember what it was. It was,
I saw Lilith Fair there, and it was,
Yeah.
I saw a lot of concerts, but I remember Lilith
Yeah.
Fair. Gosh, that was so good.
oh, what was it? Oh, we'll find it.
I'm going to have to do, at some point, we're going to have to do a repository or whatever of all the different concerts that we've been to.
Oh, wow.
Because I totally forgot I've been to Lilith Fair. And when I think about the concerts I've been to, that would not have I would have had to have reminded myself to come up with that one.
It's the Credit Union 1 Amphitheater now in Tinley Park. But what did it used to be called?
Right.
Yeah.
So if you've got anything that you just refuse to change,
Yeah,
like
we would love
Sears
to
Tower,
know.
Willis Tower, let us know. Right. It's a little bit like those names. It kind of just, and the names that we grew up with and the names of our different generations. It's a little bit like that, because I think generationally we think of buildings or arenas based off of when we knew them and when we like concerts when you were in your early 20s and you were going to concerts more, and that sticks out a little bit. So yeah, send us your different changes and name changes, and we'd love to hear it.
Yeah. All right. What else are we talking about this week?
Well, we're going to, as we've advertised and talked about, get into the discussion of Sandwich by Catherine Newman. So if you haven't read the book and you're not sure if you want to, feel free. We will give you, there's not a ton of spoilers. It's not really a spoiler book. I think when we talk about the end, we can mention it, but just know that we're going to talk about the book. And if you haven't finished it, you're going to hear a little bit about different things that are revelatory throughout the discussion.
Yes. To my cousin Katie, who texted me this afternoon to tell me that she bought the book and told me that she had finished 2 chapters in like the hour and a half between texts. You should be done by now. So anything that we say.
That's right. Exactly. And it's not a very long book,
No,
as
it's
we've
not.
said, right? So
And
that's
it's a very easy read.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons that we chose this book was because it's very, very empty nest coded, as the kids say.
Yeah.
It's about mother and father and their 2 adult children. And then her parents are the characters in the book, and a girlfriend. But I just wanted to kind of start the discussion. Is this okay, Danielle?
Yeah,
if I
please.
start with a passage it's at the very end of the book, actually. And it's actually, I think, from some of the stuff that was that is in the book was from some essays that Catherine Newman had written about being an empty nester and about having aging parents. And so she says, you hear the expression empty nest and imagine the downy expanse of it, the absence of cheeping, maybe the bird pair connecting more intimately, what with nobody barging in at midnight needing either of them to read an email to their history teacher or inspect a weird freckle that turns out to be magic marker. But often an empty nest is 2 birds looking at each other, shell-shocked and nostalgic over the single worm they're now splitting for dinner, discussing what to do with the worm leftovers. And then she does this hilarious passage where she talks about her parents buying a lovely piece of halibut from Whole Foods and then making a meal out of it every night during the week.
Right,
It's
for
so
4 or 5
great.
different meals.
Yeah. But I loved this book so much because it just really captures this time in our lives so well. So you've got questions and things that we're going to talk about. So let's just dig right in.
Perfect. I guess maybe I do reviews on Goodreads. I've talked about that before, and I thought maybe we'll kick this off with just our general thoughts on what the book is to us, and I will read from my review. It said, maybe it's the realistic descriptions of menopause or the internal dialogue that mirrors my own, the constant berating of ourselves for past actions or the push and pull of motherhood. All of these and more provided a glimpse into the female psyche that is struggling and thriving simultaneously. And that is what I feel like this book is. It encompasses all of those pieces.
It does so well. I think that it is the most interesting and on target representation of menopause that I've read in a book.
Yeah.
Like, she is angry and then she's weepy and she's sweaty and she's like losing her mind. She can't remember anything. It's so great. And then she's also like sort of resigned to this is who I am now.
Exactly.
There's a great section where they talk about cellulite, and the main character, whose name is Rocky, who's 54, says, I don't really care about cellulite anymore. And her daughter Willa, who's a little bit of a smartass, says, smart. I mean, from an evolutionary standpoint, that cellulite is probably saving your life. Think about it. Old women, what are they even good for? None taken, I say, before she says no offense. And she laughs, chews thoughtfully. You're not making babies, so nobody needs to think you're hot, but maybe you're useful. You can take care of other people's babies, help keep them alive long enough to reproduce, so you're still genetically important. And she says,
oh, that's such a rough
yeah.
sentence.
And then Rocky says, and the cellulite? Willa holds up a finger, finishes chewing, swallows, and drains her can. You need the cellulite as energy reserve in case the patriarchy decides you're ugly and pointless and stop feeding you. And I just feel like it's clever and snarky,
Yeah.
and it's also very true. Like,
Very true throughout.
yeah. So,
And I think it's probably really specific
mhm,
for an audience. We actually did get a couple of listener questions. So I thought I would read the first one that actually is a little bit about this.
mhm.
Beth actually wrote to us and said there were several realistic portions of the book. I need to get closer because specifically around how Rocky describes hot flashes and menopause.
Mhm.
But as someone who doesn't have kids, the book ended up being very specific to moms and was at times a little hard to relate to. So, Beth asked us, as part of your discussion, I would love to hear you touch a little bit on some of the non mom related themes in the book and how they impacted you as women.
So anybody who's been in a book club with me knows that I generally do not like a mom book.
Yeah.
I and maybe I'm becoming a little less stringent about that because I'm not momming as hard as I used to.
Hmm.
But I can see how this book would be sort of a turnoff because it is a lot of mom content. And actually, the second time I read it through, I was like, wow, I'm surprised that I like this book because it's so mom centric.
Yeah.
But what I love about it is, and Rocky moms in a way that is not necessarily the way that I mom.
No,
She's much more, how do I say this? Much more emotionally dependent on her children.
that's a good way to say it, actually.
Um,
Yeah.
and that's a little bit of a, uh, I don't want to say it's a turnoff, but it's harder for me to relate to. But what I did really relate to was um, the way that Catherine Newman represents menopause and aging
And aging. Yeah.
and dealing with aging parents. Not something that I really am doing right now because
Right.
my parents are in fantastic shape, thank God, and they don't need a lot of my assistance at this point in their lives. Much like Rocky's
Rocky's
parents.
parents. Yeah.
Um, those are the things that I think, and then relationships. So it delves pretty deeply into her relationship with her husband,
Yes.
which is changing because of the point that they are in their lives.
Yeah.
So I think those are things that I sort of held on to that aren't mom related. But she's definitely right. Who was that, Beth?
Mm-hmm.
It's a very mom centric book.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I really thought the themes of marriage,
mhm,
both the parents' marriage
mhm,
and between Rocky and Nick were,
mhm,
and then you've got this new um, relationship between the son and
mhm,
his girlfriend.
mhm.
There was a lot of realistic thinking behind that, what youth and youthful relationships are
Mhm.
versus 25, 30-year relationships and then the 50-year
Yeah.
relationships and how people coexist in different parts of their lives. That was good. Another theme that really stuck out was secrets.
Oh, yeah.
And
Everybody seems to have some in this book, except maybe Nick.
except for maybe Nick,
Yeah.
right? But he gets blamed for not being very
Right.
emotionally available.
Right.
And so I guess maybe that's the key. If you don't have secrets, you are able to just live through life.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's really the case. And there were some pretty big secrets in the book. And it made me think. So that was one of the book club questions that came
Mhm.
up. Are secrets damaging to relationships? Or is there something that, are there reasons sometimes that people keep secrets?
Right.
That's a tough
I
question
think
to
yes
answer.
and yes.
Yeah. Yes.
I think that I mean, in this case, there's a big secret that Rocky has, and she's kept it for a long time.
Yeah. Over 20 years or
Yeah.
19 years,
Something
something.
like
Yeah.
that. And it finally comes out. She and you get the feeling that she would have gone to her grave with it if it hadn't
Mm-hmm.
come out. And it becomes a point of conflict between her and her husband, Nick. But they work through it.
Right.
And I think that that's the key, like, is the idea that I kept this secret more important than what we've put into this relationship for the past however many years?
Yeah.
Like, is this one thing so big and so bad that it changes how we think about each other. And clearly for him, it doesn't.
It wasn't. And when she talks about it too, it wasn't necessarily a surprise based on all the things she was saying. Like
Right.
at the time, I think that she was very open about how overwhelmed she was. And so, not that it's justified, but I don't know. Secrets are tough. I think I don't necessarily agree with her choice there, but I
To
also,
keep it a secret.
yeah. And she terminated a pregnancy and told her husband she had miscarried because she still had an infant and like a 4-year-old
Yeah.
and was overwhelmed and quite frankly very depressed and didn't know what to do. And that's a really, really hard thing. But she was telling him the whole time, I don't think I can do this.
Right.
And so, right, but that's still something you should talk with your spouse about. Secrets, I don't know. I don't keep secrets, but then I think if my child came and asked me to keep something very private because they didn't want to hurt a relationship or they just weren't ready to face that, would I do that? Maybe.
Yeah. I don't know.
Those are tough themes that I thought were really well worked out. There was one book review, the Chicago Review of Books. There was a male who actually did the book review, and he said, I hated when secrets were revealed and it didn't like break things apart. And revealing secrets is supposed to do that. And I thought, well, that's not really a mature relationship.
Right. I think this was a much more realistic way of handling it than, I mean, they've been together for however long. They've had their ups and downs. They're currently having their ups and downs because she's menopausal and a little crazy.
Yeah.
And he's as steady as can be, which drives her crazy because she's very dramatic. And part of the reason that it works for them is because she's dramatic and he's not.
Stable.
And I think that, no, I don't. I think that this was a realistic way of presenting this conflict, and that they worked through it is much more, I think, true to life than them blowing up their marriage and their family that they really value. I mean, she's constantly talking about how much she loves her children and she loves her husband, even though at moments she's like, I can't stand anyone and I just want to get out of here.
Right.
You know, at one point she's on her phone and she's looking at, divorce things, but she doesn't really mean it.
No. And she's constantly terrified he's going to leave her.
Right. Right.
Which, as you're going through changes, I don't think that's abnormal.
Right. So no. And in many ways, as I reread it, I kind of thought, oh, this is maybe more conflict than I even wanted.
Yeah.
I felt like, and maybe it's because I had read her other stuff, which some of it sort of skirts around talking about the relationships with her grown children and her aging parents. And it didn't have that conflict of, oh, I terminated a pregnancy and kept this secret about it. And I don't know. I understand there needed to be some conflict in the book.
Right.
But I also think like it was kind of oh, there needs to be conflict. I'm going to throw this in a little bit.
Yeah.
And but what it did was I thought it led to a really interesting conversation between her and her daughter about abortion and about, she regretted it. And the daughter says, but you can't regret it. Because that's not politically where you are. And she's like, but personally, that's where I am.
Yeah.
And I like the idea that people can talk about, I have personal feelings about this, but I also have a political feeling about it.
Yep.
And I got to make this choice, and nobody made this choice for me or didn't allow me to make this choice. And however I feel about it are my feelings about it. And nobody else gets to feel about it because it's my choice. And so I thought that was a really interesting conversation that you don't see a lot in literature. And
Right, exactly.
I thought that was valuable. It was, and sort of the generational, for her, it was very personal. For Rocky, it was personal. And for Willa, it was like, this is a political statement.
Yeah.
And yeah, sort of their coming to an understanding about that was, I thought valuable for people to read about and think about.
Yeah. Right. And the secrets of the aging parents that don't say the health issues they're
Right,
having,
right,
because we don't want to bother you
right.
or,
And we also don't want to confront that we're aging
yes.
and
Yeah.
that we have these
Yep.
things.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So those were some of the other themes that kind of bubbled up, the marriage piece.
Hmm.
And yeah, the secrets it was an underlying thing. We had one other person, Jenny said, I had a hard time relating to the kids in the book, especially Willa, which is the daughter we just
Hmm.
mentioned. Curious your thoughts on the kids and the relationship they had with their mom. She was a lot,
She was a
but her
lot.
mom was a lot too.
Yes. She was very emotionally involved and emotionally dependent on her children.
Yes.
And her children, so Willa, it's clear in the book, both Willa and Rocky deal with anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Both are on medication for their anxiety. Somebody makes a comment about that, and it's handled in a funny way. Willa's queer, and there's a little bit of Rocky being so pleased and proud of that it's like performatively, oh, I have a queer daughter,
Yeah.
which kind of is like, okay, Rocky, it's her life. You don't get to claim that.
Exactly.
Um, but the relationship between them, I would be interested to know if it's always been like that.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like it always has.
Mm-hmm.
Like they've always been kind of emotionally dependent on each other.
Right.
And I think that's an interesting dynamic. I think that they have what I love about the two of them is the dialogue. They speak to each other in a way that I think is kind of actually very realistic. Willa is calling her mom out on things all the time.
Yes.
I love the fact that you can tell the kids love Rocky, but they also think she's kind of ridiculous.
And really annoying. Like, please
Yes.
stop telling me to put lip balm on and
Yes.
sunscreen. We know.
And as a mom, I felt seen there. I
Yes.
know that my kids are like, you are ridiculous, but we love you,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that that's super realistic. And I loved that.
Yeah. I felt like it was very Gen Z telling
Yeah.
Gen X moms, like, no, you can't say that anymore.
Yeah.
Or like the grandpa said something that was very out of date and
Yeah.
you kind of just like, just let it go.
Yeah.
Right. That happens almost every time the grandparents and my kids get together. And
Oh,
you're like,
yeah.
it's not that big of a deal. They didn't mean to be offensive. It's just different terminology for
Right.
different
There's
generations.
a lot of eye rolling and cringe.
Yes,
And
exactly.
that's just part of, generations being together
Yeah.
and having different ways of thinking about the world. I did love that, though, that they were all on vacation together in a place where they've been going for years, and they have sort of these rituals and traditions. And because my family's been going to the same place it'll be 50 years next year.
Right.
And that's home.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it was presented in the book. Like, we have these lives that we live all the rest of the year, but for 1
Right.
week a year, this is home for us.
So there was one point that actually talked about that the passing of time is a
Mhm.
big theme, and that being at the same vacation place
Mhm.
really timestamps
Mhm.
that passing of time, which you probably are part of
Oh, yeah.
when you go back. That's a long time to say, I remember coming here as a child, and now my kids
Right.
are coming here as a
Adults.
college graduate.
Right. Right.
And I remember being the college graduate, or I remember my parents, what, or right, at some point
Yes.
in time.
Yes. No, I remember, but no, you're right. I remember being there as a teen and
Mhm.
hanging out and doing yeah. I mean, it's really interesting to have, the first time we went there I was 6, and so now, in 2026 it'll be 50 years, and we've all been there together almost every year
And you
for 50
probably
years.
have rituals that you want to do
Oh, we
every
do.
time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, they closed, which is
Yeah.
really sad.
Yeah. Or they changed the name,
They changed the name.
but we're still going to call it
Right?
whatever.
Such and such ice cream shop, because
Mhm.
that's where we like to go.
Mhm.
So I think that was a big part of it, in that passing of time.
Mhm.
There were a couple of other, if you would indulge me for a second, there were a couple of passages that really stuck out to me too. There was one passage that was talking about, speaking of secrets, Willa was in the hospital for something.
Mm.
And so I'm going to jump around a little bit, so forgive me. She said it was, she said, I'll just tell you that one spring morning 3 years ago, I posted a photograph from a hospital window of a Boston park in bloom, and a friend on social media, a person I had never even met in real life, wrote me privately to say, hey, I know that view. I'm here, head of pediatrics. Let me know if you need anything or if I can help you in any way. And she went on and said, I cried then. I'm crying now, remembering. Despair laced through with so much incredible beauty. And I was like, that is the stuff that makes you cry.
Right.
Some stranger can see the pain that you're in.
What you're going through.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
sometimes your family and friends can't see
Right.
that because they're wrapped up in the other reasons why you're there. And sometimes you just want to be seen for who you are.
Right. Right. And to sort of go along with that, she talks later on about Nick. At one point, they're in an emergency room,
Yeah.
and Nick's job is to drive people around and get people coffee and sandwiches or whatever. And that's what he does. And she talks about how she wishes that he was there to console her or whatever, but he knows what his job is. And they wouldn't be able to do what they do without somebody doing that stuff too. And I think that's
Exactly.
really interesting how your roles sort of change and fit with whatever we need right now.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
loved that passage where you don't know really what it is, but the fact that somebody that she kind of knew
Just through social media, but
Yeah.
never met in person. But it was like, I know what you're going
Yeah.
through because I see it all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm here. It was a little bit like our discussion with the kids and anxiety. Sometimes seeing a viewpoint, because you're trying to help the person that's hurting so much, and being seen as the helper.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that can be difficult.
Yeah.
So one other passage that really struck out was at the very end of the book when Rocky, Nick, Maya, and all the kids were talking about their favorite things about the week. And they each went through and took turns. And then she says, Rocky is the narrator, and she says, nobody has asked me what my favorite part of the week is. And I was like, yep.
Moms are never in the pictures.
No, you're totally overlooked. But
Mhm.
the reason why they go through and talk about their favorite things is because the moms are trying to
Right.
help, put a bookend on this vacation and timestamp that and go through that. We keep things working, and then you're just totally overlooked. And those were the really mom-specific things that went into it. I think I told you this morning, I had a bit of a strange morning, and I was a little inspired by the book, and I wrote a little sandwich-esque prose that was actually inspired by that passage. About the first maybe 60 seconds of my day.
Okay. I
Will you
cannot
indulge
wait. I
me?
got a text at 7:30 this morning, and she's like, I wrote something for the podcast.
I know. Do you know that I scheduled that too? Because I was like, because I texted you as somebody else, and I was like, it is before 6:30 a.m. I need
was
to not
up
do
because
that.
the dog had put his tongue in my nose by then, so I was awake.
And this is just one of these realities.
I cannot wait.
So it's not so long. I tried to make it short. And Lizzie, please cut it if it's too long. So again, we're going to have similar waking up stories. Once again, I am woken up by the muffled sound of my geriatric one-eyed dog. The bark is muffled because of the noise-canceling AirPods I wear almost every night as I listen to the same movie to help drown out the incessant worry and rage constantly spinning in my head. And as he barks for the third time, Rick rolls over next to me pretending not to hear the dog, but clearly can because he's angry, which may just be me interpreting what his feelings are, that it's already the third alert and that it's time for me to get up. And even though my alarm hasn't gone off yet, I have to get out of bed.
I'm the Rick.
That's funny. So now I'm mad at the dog and Rick because all I want is to sleep because I'm so tired, like weary to my bones tired all day, every day. Then I think of all the times Rick has gotten up with the dog, or the kids for that matter, and I could probably count it on less than 2 hands. I know this because of the lavish praise and thanks I give to him whenever it does happen, while I fume with anger that I have never once received a thank you for doing the same thing for over 21 years.
Thank you, Danielle.
Thanks, Amy.
On behalf of your family.
I'm almost done. One more paragraph. Then suddenly I pop up and check my phone because Murphy has stayed on campus and I'm terrified I've missed a panic attack or worse, which I think about way too often, because I had the gall to go to bed early last night. Thankfully, the screen is empty except for the movie that is constantly teed up at night. And I quickly check her location and she's safe in her dorm room, as are my parents, safe at their home and not at the hospital. And I'm grateful that Rick is still asleep, even if he's just pretending, because worse than getting up with the dog is not having quiet time to recover from the whiplash of the first few seconds of the morning.
Oh, Danielle.
Right? And I'm like, dude, no wonder why I'm tired.
Yeah.
I maybe need to do a podcast and have therapy with everybody. And that is really...
And that was all this morning?
Seriously, like the first 60 seconds.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I think of, like, when you wake up is, oh my God, this, and then, damn, the dog, and I'm so tired, and why doesn't he get up? But I don't really want him to get up. And we all have our roles to play, and sometimes you want to break those roles, but that's really hard when you're in long-term relationships.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality of what you've settled into.
You get settled in, and that nobody thanks you for the things that you do.
No.
And
No.
Wow.
So that was my thing. So, but I think that that's probably a lot of people feel that, and you're worried. And I'm like, my mom's had the flu this week. I hope she's not in the hospital. Right? Those things that you just are constantly swirling, and that's what I thought that Catherine Newman captured so well. Is that constant up and down, and oh my God, and why do I worry about this? Why am I always terrified that my kids have not survived the night, even in 21?
Just read just 2 sentences that I have marked. In the Cape photos from when the children were little, I'm squinting grimly into the sun to make sure they're not drowning or choking on sand or catching spontaneously on fire. A deep, worried line divides my forehead in half. I remember not only the vigilance, but also, more shamefully, the exasperation.
Yeah.
Like the amount of time that you spend worrying about everything.
Everything, right? The constant worry about the sharks in the ocean that were part of this.
Are they getting sunburn? Are they? Yes.
Even as adult children, we still worry, and I'm sure our parents worry about us in the same way.
Right. There's a part at the end where it says you don't never worry about your children or something like that, which, like, I think I've said this before, occurred to me about 5 years ago when my kids were 17 and 14, and I thought, oh my God, I'm never not going to worry about them.
Yeah.
Like, why did I not think of that before?
Yeah.
I don't know. Crazy. I just love the way she phrases some things. This is the beginning of the 11th chapter. So it's broken up into 7 days or 6 days.
6 or 7. I can't remember.
So each day is a day that they're at their rental place on Cape Cod. And she just says, the molecular disturbance of an unwell child always wakes me up.
Yep.
You never, like, you don't wake up. You wake up because there's a sick kid there. You know what I love that.
And you can feel it no matter what. Like, I know the days that I'm going to get a worried phone call because you just are connected to your kids in a way that, you just know. You just have this weird, like, what'd she say, molecular sense?
Molecular disturbance.
You can feel that. Probably like twins are.
Yeah, maybe.
The last thing, I guess, before we move on, because we don't want to go too long and have you guys listen so much, and then we can have any last thoughts. And this is kind of the big spoiler at the end, even though it's not really a spoiler. What did you think about the ending of the book? the after chapter?
So I think that it ended the way it needed to.
I thought so too.
Yeah.
The mom had passed away.
Yeah. The grandma. Yeah.
Yep. And I thought that's real.
Yeah. I mean, the structure of the book is that it's a woman who has adult children and aging parents, and things change for all of them along the
Mhm.
way. The son ultimately gets married,
Yep.
and the grandma dies, and that's
That's the passing of time and the
right.
reality of. So sometimes Rocky and Willow were so dramatic, but
Yeah.
then like the big dramatic moments kind of felt not mundane, but a
Hmm.
little mundane because it's just life creeping on
Hmm.
and time keeps passing. And that really, when I read it the second time, that's what really struck me the
Hmm.
most is the continuous passage of time, and the things that are supposed to be big and dramatic actually are not as dramatic as you anticipate them to be.
Hmm. She says, "I've always hated euphemisms about the end of life. Just say dead or died. I've wanted to say crankily when a phrase enters my ears about that person passing on, passing away, leaving us too soon. But I think I was wrong. A transition is so much gentler than an ending, and in a million ways, my mother is here with us still." And I think that's a thing that it's not that dramatic.
No.
Like and it is a transition. And there are all kinds of transitions in this book and in life, right?
Yep.
And I think that we think like, oh, this is going to be such a dramatic thing that happens. And I mean, I think it can
Yeah,
be.
I think there's a lot of traumatic experiences
Right.
that people go through
But I
that
think
are.
in this case, like you knew it was going to happen,
Mhm.
and you knew that it was, and especially, I mean, she had been in hospice, so it wasn't even like it was unexpected. I don't know. It's just I really like this book. And there are things that on second reading I was like, I don't know about that. But um I just think it captures this stage of life
Yeah,
really well.
I think so too.
Yeah.
And I think that absolutely. And the female perspective of it
Right.
all.
Right.
I would love to read a book from a male perspective of this time of life
Yeah.
and see the difference between it.
That would be very interesting.
Yes. And is there the internal monologue that is
Right.
constantly running through this, that clearly is constantly running through my own head
Right.
at all times? And to just know that difference, to be a little more relatable.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good. Although I will say my mom and my aunt just both read it. My aunt, her, what she said was, oh, yeah, it brought back a lot of memories,
Okay.
which I thought was interesting. My mom didn't like it so much. And I think that probably it was because the narrator's, she's dramatic, she's
Yeah.
neurotic. And I was annoyed with her a little bit at some points. And she's overly dependent and whatever. And that's just not,
It's not the way you parent.
no,
Yeah.
no. So, yeah. But I just think it's,
It
like I
was a
said,
unique
yeah,
perspective
yeah,
that you don't get a
yeah,
realistic breakdown of
right. And
the female psyche.
I think she's I love her writing style.
Yeah.
I love how funny and snarky and chaotic and
Chaotic is right.
just yeah. So there you go.
Okay, well, thanks for reading the book. We have talked about we're going to try to do a book a quarter.
Yeah,
We
seasonal.
don't know what the next one will be,
No.
but as soon as we've got one picked, we will definitely let you know. And yeah, we'll go from there.
Yeah.
We do a lot of female themed because
Mhm.
that's typically what I read. So
Mhm.
we know what our audience
Yes.
is, and
Yes.
my Amazon. I guess not Amazon, my Goodreads, which actually is owned by Amazon.
Oh, it
I
is?
think so. They
Oh.
know how to market to me as the
Yeah.
female reader. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I saw if you liked this, you would like The
yep.
Wedding People.
Yep.
What
Oh,
else
yeah.
did
The
I
Wedding People is
see?
good. I think that was I think I mentioned that was one of my top ones.
Yeah, and I got it for Christmas for
Yep.
my kids. So, Okay, so what else? Are we going to go on to cheers to
I
that?
think we should go on to cheers to that.
Can I do mine first? Because I
Please.
see that you have something interesting in here. My cheers to that is cheers to Bridget Jones.
Okay.
So I watched the new Bridget Jones movie, Bridget Jones, Mad About the Boy,
Yeah.
which is the fourth Bridget Jones. I don't know if I ever saw the
I don't remember
third
the
one.
third one.
Patrick Dempsey was in it, which I would have
Really?
thought I saw it.
Didn't we do a Bridget Jones screening one time? Didn't you host a private party where we did Bridget Jones or a book club?
Did I?
I think you did.
Well, I love Bridget Jones. Like
I may have imagined that.
maybe I should have. Bridget Jones's Diary is one of my favorite movies. Like
Yeah.
literally in my top 5 probably. And so Joe and I actually watched it together, Bridget Jones, Mad About the Boy, which is on Peacock. Friday night, Saturday night, I don't know when we watched it. And cheers to the final movie in the series.
Yeah.
It's clearly we're done.
Okay.
It was very good. It was sad.
Yeah.
So this is not a spoiler for anybody who's knows anything about Bridget Jones. She marries Mark Darcy. Darcy dies shortly before this movie takes place. So she has 2 little kids. And the great thing about it is that she and Daniel Cleaver, played by Hugh Grant, are great friends now
Okay.
and can rely on each other for
Wow.
support and also, a little bit of joy here and there. She is still kind of a mess, like she always was. But what I didn't like about it maybe is it just wasn't quite as funny as the first one. But what I loved about it is that it brings back so many of the characters from the first movie. And there are also callbacks to things from the first movie. There's a Christmas party at the end, and Bridget and Mark's son is wearing the reindeer sweater.
Oh my goodness, the reindeer sweater.
Yeah.
Oh, I
So,
need to watch it.
Yeah. But what is interesting about it, in light of some of the things that we've discussed on this podcast, Bridget has a relationship with a much younger man.
Mm.
And it is, I would say it's represented in it's not baby girl by any stretch. It's not, what's the one, the Leo Grand one? Thanks to You, Leo Grand, or whatever, with Emma Thompson. It's just, she just has a little fling with this guy. The guy that was in the second season of White Lotus, who played the nephew of one of the gays on the yacht.
Okay.
The kind of the British kid that was hanging out with
It's so funny.
Jennifer Coolidge's assistants.
Oh,
assistant.
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, Leo something. And he's actually, he and Megan Twohey, is that her name? Who was in White Lotus. Is she putting
Yeah. So the
fact-checking me in the
Jack.
chat?
Yep. And Leo Woodhall.
Yeah.
And Megan Fahey.
Fahey too.
Well, that's not the assistant though.
No. She was one of the couples, Aubrey Plaza and
Megan Fahey.
Megan Fahey. And
Yeah.
Megan Fahey was in The Bold Type, which you should watch.
Okay.
Anyway, they're like a real life couple. Anyway, but that's neither here nor there. But he's really good in it. But he's in it for just a really short. It's kind of like, oh, let's let Bridget have a nice fling with a younger man. And it just like there's so many older women, younger men relationships in movies all over the place right now. It's so trendy.
Yeah.
And so she does that, and then she ends up with a very nice gentleman who's a little bit more appropriate for her.
It's funny. Is it really like sugary? Is it really, you said it's a little sad.
It's a little sad. No, it's not sugary. It's just,
I was going to say saccharine, but I don't feel like nobody
not
knows.
at all. No, it's
reference.
not saccharine, but there are parts of it where you're like, oh, Bridget,
Mhm.
and
She's still making silly mistakes.
oh, she's not as wacky as she was, but she's also 20 years older
Yeah.
than she was in the first one. And what I love about it is the way that her relationships with the people around her have continued and matured. and that she's still grieving Mark Darcy. He shows up a couple of times.
Okay.
And you're like, oh, but it's good. It's a very good sort of finish to the life of Bridget Jones.
Sure.
I liked it. I wish it had been a little funnier, but I understand what they were doing, and I
Yeah.
think they did a good job. So, cheers to Bridget Jones.
On Peacock.
Yep.
All right. That will be on my
Yeah.
list of things. Okay. I have 2 cheers to that. One is quick. My cheers is to the gentleman who was rafting in the ocean, who was swallowed by a humpback whale
Yes,
and survived.
Yeah.
Was spit out about a minute later.
that was crazy.
Insane.
And his father was filming it.
Yes.
And what I don't know what I would have done in that father's. I mean, what?
So have you ever gone on like a whale
No.
thing? So when we were in just outside of San Francisco, we did like a tour to see whales.
Mhm.
And in the vastness of the ocean, they
Mhm.
actually look kind of small because
Yeah.
it's and
Yeah.
then you see him just be swallowed by this whale and it's like, oh, full on Pinocchio.
I was thinking Jonah, but
Okay, all right. So cheers to the gentleman who survived being
my
swallowed
God,
by a
yeah.
humpback
I
whale.
mean, yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
The second cheers to that is a holdover from last week, and
Mhm.
it is to your style.
Okay.
You were trying to figure out a persona.
Right, because you are a preppy banker who has a lake house but also likes to be in the city or something
Right.
like that.
You don't fit a mold because
Oh,
you're
a mold.
no, because honestly, I'm not trying to blow smoke up your tush, right?
Thank you.
Uh-huh. You live by your rules. And so you are not in one bucket or another bucket. You take on just who you are and your clothes match that. I don't think you have to fit in a bucket. And I'm constantly trying to fit in and you don't feel the
So-
need to do that I see.
I would say that this is just another example of my lack of discipline.
No.
Yes, I can't stick with when I turned 30,
Uh-huh.
I decided I wanted to have a signature scent.
Okay.
So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what my signature scent was. It was going to be a classic fragrance. It was going to be something that people would recognize, but maybe okay, part of my thing was like it needs to be a little bit old, like a little
Okay.
bit like vintagey. So I bought myself a big bottle of Shalimar,
Okay.
which I wore until I was done with that bottle. And at the same time, I was also wearing Joe by Giorgio Armani. I can't stick with one thing. That's what you're saying. Like,
Yeah. But I see that as you're constantly keeping up with trends. You do have a signature scent, by the way.
no, I don't.
Well, to me, there is a scent that I smell, and I always think of you.
It's probably the Hanamori one.
No,
What is it?
it's definitely patchouli.
Oh, but I don't even wear patchouli anymore.
I know, but when you do,
You wear it long enough, it's stuck on you and you still just exude it.
that's what I think of. It's your
Really?
signature scent.
Oh, wow. Huh.
Right. But
I
no,
used to
I don't
actually-
think it's not discipline. Honestly, I do think that it's just that you're really good at finding trends and doing what makes you feel good
Yeah.
and confident. And that is so much better than preppy banker.
No, I love Preppy Banker. And I love Preppy Banker that it's like Preppy Banker at the lake or Preppy
Well-
Banker in the city. Never Preppy Banker downstate, though.
Not downstate. We're trying not to, as I'm basically wearing a blanket tonight.
I think I was telling Emma about downstate and she's like, but you live downstate. Like,
Unfortunately, and yeah,
yes, we do. And maybe
up
for those
downstate.
of you who are joining us from other parts of the world, what we mean when we say downstate is we live in Illinois. And so Chicago is in Illinois. And anywhere outside of Chicago in Illinois is considered downstate. Even if you live north of Chicago, sort of.
Yeah.
Depending where you live. Like
Yeah.
if you live in Gurnee, that's downstate.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit like New York and upstate.
Right,
You know,
exactly.
if you're outside of the city, they think most people know that you're just upstate.
Right. But so we've sort of made it into a vibe kind of, and it's snarky. We don't want to be downstate.
No.
We want to be but we're not necessarily saying that we're Chicago people either.
Right.
We're I don't know. Anyway, she's like, stop trying to make downstate happen.
That's very good advice, Emma.
Okay, as long as I'm not downstate,
You're not
I'm
even
okay
close,
with
and you're not old at all. You just
Okay.
you just know how to dress,
Well-
and you have trends. So I'm not putting you in a bucket. You don't need that. You've never been in a bucket.
I feel like I would like to be a little trendier though.
Okay.
So I'm going to work on that.
Okay. Well, let's think about that.
Yeah.
And how?
You know what I've been thinking about? We have a big event coming up in May, both of us, where we're not the center of attention, but we do need to be appropriate.
Yes, like when we went on college visits.
Right. We want to be in the top 10% of the moms
Yep.
at the college graduations.
Okay, fair enough.
So how do we do that? We want your tips about those of you who have had kids graduate from college. We haven't had that. What do you wear? Like what's too much? What's not enough? What's like appropriate for you to wear that doesn't take focus away from your child who just spent 4 years of their life successfully completing their degree? I've graduated twice since high school, but I've never actually participated in a graduation ceremony as a graduate. I've participated as a professor,
Right?
and
You never walked the stage.
I never walked a stage for
Aw.
graduation for college or grad school. So
You got to get another degree. It's pretty fun.
no, I don't want to do that.
Fair enough.
And if I did, it would not be to walk the stage. Like that's not a thing because my grad school degree I did online, and there was an online graduation where my name went across the
Oh.
screen, but that wasn't.
My master's was online, and
Yeah.
I went up to the
Yeah.
campus and walked. I felt silly, but I'm glad I did it.
Yeah. Well, since I didn't do undergrad graduation, I
Yeah.
didn't. It just wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
I just got my diploma in the mail in December or August or whatever, and they were like, "Thank God we're done with her.
And you're like, thank God I'm done.
Thank God I'm done." And I did. Last week, the week before, I was stressed out about something, and I did have that dream where I hadn't gone to class,
Oh,
and it was like the end of the semester, and then when you like have to wake yourself up and go, no, like you got that degree and another degree, so don't stop it,
right.
right?
You need to put some AirPods in and
Right,
have
apparently.
something dealing
Right.
with that.
Okay, so I'm no style Amy.
No, you are Amy's style. You have your own style and embrace it and enjoy it.
Okay,
It's very
well,
good.
I'm glad that we can make a little bit of this just about me. Thank you.
All right.
Should we move on?
Yeah.
To Bravo winners
Bravos.
and losers. Just a reminder, starting, I believe this comes out on the 25th. I have to think about how time works. Our next episode, we are going to start our Bravo bracket. The month of
Oh, good.
March,
Okay.
we will be battling. What do we call that when the sports thing is lost on me? I used to be really into like college basketball, all of that
Yeah.
stuff, but we're pairing
brackets.
up. We're pairing up
Yeah.
Housewives franchises, and they're battling for the
championship.
The championship,
Uh-huh.
right? And we're going to ask you to vote for some of these to see what you think the winner should be, but ultimately Danielle and I get to make the decision.
Okay.
But like in the actual NCAA tournaments, there's some randomness that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I know what my top franchise would be, but because we have to pair them up,
Yeah.
and we're going to knock some out, we don't know how it's going to end up. So that'll be coming up in March, starting with our next episode.
Fantastic.
We'll take the 12 Real Housewives franchises and start the battle royale.
I can't wait. I
who
can't
wins.
wait because I'm not sure I know. No, I
Oh,
guess it does the pairings. Yeah.
yeah. It's gonna be it'll be fun. Okay, so Bravo winners and losers. You want to go first? Or you want me to go first? I'll
Either
go
way.
first.
Okay.
Mine this week, each one is both a winner and a loser.
Oh, I understand that.
And they are Sutton and Reba, her mother,
Yep.
from Beverly Hills. And Sutton took Garcelle and Kyle back to Augusta, to her like gorgeous home in Augusta.
Where her mom lives in like the carriage house.
Yeah, in the backyard.
Yeah.
And Sutton and Reba had mom, daughter, I don't even
Trauma
know.
drama.
Trauma drama, right? Yes. They're both winners and losers. Let's talk through this. Sutton is a winner because she told her mom what she really wanted to hear and what she really needed from her mom. But also, Sutton, you're 50 some years old, and why are you doing this now?
Yeah.
Like, let your mom be your mom. So winner for realizing what she needed from her mom, but loser for kind of like, it's been your entire life.
Yeah.
You think you're going to get it now. Just be okay with it. Reba, winner because she, I think, dealt with some serious trauma
Yeah.
as a mother who lost her husband to suicide
Yeah.
and dealt with his substance abuse issues throughout the years, which hardened her, obviously.
Yep.
But then she became she was a successful career woman in a place and a time where that was not necessarily rewarded or respected. So that's why she's a winner. She's a loser because she's low-key racist.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, she didn't treat Garcelle very
She did
nice.
not treat Garcelle well and didn't make any bones about it.
No.
And also because she didn't really understand what her daughter needed from her and wasn't really willing to give it
Yeah. Or listen.
or listen.
Yeah.
Right. So both Sutton and Reba, winners and losers this week.
Fair enough. Mine are not that deep. My winner is the Real Housewives of Potomac. Started their reunion, and every single one of them, their boobs were popping in some way or another.
So last night, Joe and I watched Beverly Hills because Joe is a Bravo-holic now,
Right.
apparently, and he has lots to say. And then the rerun of the Potomac reunion came on after that. And I said, well, I don't want to watch this. I've already watched it. It's all about boobs anyway, which piqued his interest. And then we had a discussion about the various boobs. Like
Some of them were up to their neck. Some of them were hanging down to their.
some of them were, because of the way that their dresses were structured, were just misshapen.
Yes. I am always surprised.
Wendy?
Like when you sit down, you're going to be sitting in these clothes.
Right.
Why don't you find an
Right.
outfit that looks good when you're sitting?
Sitting. Right, because you're sitting for 3 episodes.
Yes.
Right?
Right. One side is a big globe and the other one is like tucked under. And yeah, the boobs were, that is the theme of the Potomac
Absolutely.
reunion, as the boobs.
Yes.
My loser is from Southern Charm, Shep and Sienna's relationship. That was maybe the most painful
Ooh.
discussion between a so-called couple I've ever seen. And Shep, man, she does not like you.
No, she doesn't. And I think that's okay.
I know. Honestly, though, I felt terrible for him, but also he put expectations on her that were unrealistic.
Right.
It was just really uncomfortable.
It was
to
very
watch.
uncomfortable. And for him to be, yeah, it was very uncomfortable. And I don't know how much of that is produced.
Yeah.
I think, that show in particular, I think is heavily under the arm of Whitney.
Oh, yeah.
And Shep and Whitney are friends, and he's not gonna, and I think that Shep is smart enough to know how to play the game.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. Yeah, it's gross how that relationship is sort of playing out, and he's being weird about it. And I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how she's portrayed going forward. If she's portrayed as sort of a fame seeker, gold digger.
I know. I don't like that.
I don't like that either, because I think that, yeah, I don't know.
So more to come on Shep and Sienna.
Yeah.
But that was my loser for the week. So
Yeah. And my other losers, I hate to say it, but Summer House, what are we doing? What are we doing? Lindsay's pregnant. Carl's 50. I don't know how old he really is, but he's 50 in a sad sack. And Kyle and Amanda, like, maybe we need to just stop with Summer House and give them something more appropriate to do.
yeah, like the Valley.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you age out of partying all the time.
Yeah. The age range between Carl, the sad sack 50-year-old man, and he's not 50, and Lexi, the new girl that just started, she's like 22 or something. It's gross.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, there you go.
All right.
That's what's happening on Bravo. What do we have coming up? We have Bravo brackets for March. We're thinking about a book. If you have suggestions of a book that you've read that you would love for us to have a discussion about,
we would love to have some recommendations.
Yeah, that would be great. Because I think that we have a certain thing that we're both kind of into, and it might be interesting to try something new.
Absolutely.
I don't like fantasy, though.
I don't either. We're not doing that. Or sci-fi.
No sci-fi.
I'm open to nonfiction also.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So something to consider.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's it for us tonight. I think we need to go watch Summer House now and bitch about how old they are. So thank you for joining us. Thanks to producer Aunt Lizzie. Don't forget, you can contact. Why do I always have problems with that word?
I understand.
You can contact us at info@emptynesthappyhour.com. We would love to hear your book recommendations. We would love to hear your choices for the Real Housewives bracket battle. We would love to hear whatever you want to tell us, right? And you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, at Empty Nest Happy Hour. And you can go to our website. Rate us on your podcast platform so that other people can see how great we are. And don't forget to go to yinyangpilates.com for your 30% discount using the discount code ENHH30. That makes me sound like such a professional podcaster. So thank you for joining us. We will talk to you next week. Cheers.